Hi there, good evening, everybody. I want to welcome you all here to the Prog Monster. My name is Murph, and I am the host of this show. I'm also going to move up a little because I'm a little bit too further back. There we go. So, we're here to do an episode of favorites. I do this every Wednesday. I pick a topic, a top 10 here, a top 5 there, 25 of this, 24 of that, ranking, or this or that. But basically, tonight we're going to be doing 10 bands that are they overrated or are they underrated? Maybe they're not either, but we're going to find that out tonight. So I'm going to talk about them. And, I leave the floor completely open to people to tell me what they think as well. So we'll start. These are in no particular order. I didn't put them in any particular order. We're just going to talk about them in general. So the first band out of a shoot is going to be Van Halen. So Van Halen, not sure how many studio albums they have now. Probably in the 12 to 15 range, I would think. The ones that I listened to, the first 6 albums, all feature David Lee Roth on the vocals. But they also have a set of albums that came out post David Lee Roth era from 1985 onward, featuring Sammy Hagar on vocals. So you tell me. To me, Van Halen came out of nowhere with this album. This album was a master album. Lots of really big hits on the radio. You could just ream off pretty much every song on the album. Running with the Devil, Eruption, You Really Got Me, Ain't Talking About Love. Jamie's Crying is on here. Ice Cream Man, Feel Your Love Tonight. Like, it just goes on. And even the deep cuts are really good too. And then they had pretty much the same thing going on each of the next 5 albums with David Lee Roth doing vocals. Lots of hits, lots of radio-friendly stuff. Initially, some people said they were heavy metal, then they were hard rock, and then they were pop. And I think they're a little bit of all of those things. And I don't know much about the Sammy Hagar era. I don't listen to it. I do have one album by that. To me, it's continued in the same vein, but the sound is just different for me, and I just don't listen to it at all. But anyways, are they overrated or are they underrated? When you think of Van Halen, do you think that they're too much? Like, people say more about them than they deserve. Is Eddie Van Halen really the great guitar player? Is he the greatest of all time? Is he the less greatest of all time? Or are they overrated? Like, they're just overblown. They're just a lot of puff. I don't know. I tend to think they're probably just about where they should be. That's just my assessment of them. I think they have some really good instrumental stuff. They have some great vocal stuff. They have some great feel to their music, some really big hits, and some really good deep cuts too. I think they have all the things you want in a great band. But I personally don't think they're overrated. I just think they're probably just about where they should be. That's my take on Van Halen. Next band out of the chute is Thin Lizzy. This is a band that didn't achieve much worldwide success or commercial success. They did have, of course, The Boys Are Back in Town, which is on this album. That's why I chose it. I tried to choose an album I think was generally considered their biggest one. I don't know if this is their biggest one or not, but it's probably the one with the most notable song on it, as well as the title. They've had an absolute ton of great deep cut songs. To me, this band is underrated. They should have been much bigger than they are, but for whatever reason, they just didn't make that jump to the next level. So to me, they're underrated. But maybe some people think that people make too much of a deal of their music, but I don't think you can. I think if you listen to all their albums, they're just proliferated with a lot of really great songs that are maybe not getting the notoriety they should get. And so therefore the band doesn't get the notoriety they should get. The other thing that hurt them is they didn't last all that long. I think they had like 11, maybe 12 studio albums. I'm not quite sure. So the first ones were like in the early 70s, It went through to their last album in the early 80s. And they actually tour still, but not without Phil Lynott. He's gone. And to me, he's kind of the backbone of the band. When I think of Thin Lizzy, that's the name that comes to mind. So to me, this band should have been a tier 1 band, but they didn't quite make it there. So to me, they're underrated. Next up, Journey. This is a good album. I like this album. Probably my favorite album by Journey, but it's because it's a prog album. The rest of the stuff's really poppy. Well, not the rest of it. A fair bit of it is fairly poppy. It does have some really good instrumentation on it. The vocals are really good in a lot of cases. Some of the songs are very memorable. A lot of radio-friendly stuff. So much so that a couple of their songs, at least one of their songs that I know of, was a hit, number 1 hit when it came out, and then 20 years later, then number 1 hit again. So not very many bands, if any bands do that. I can't think of anybody offhand that's done that. They are very well known, very commercial band now, well known, well loved by the people that listen to them. I don't know if I would say they're overrated. And I don't know that I definitely wouldn't think they are underrated. I don't think they're underrated at all. I think, if anything, they may be overrated. My tendency is to go that route because they're not a band I listen much to. But at the same time, you got to give a due where it's due, and perhaps they're right where they should be. So that's kind of my take on Journey. So the next band off of the list is going to not be unmemorable, if nothing else. This is Led Zeppelin, of course. I think 9 albums in total. If you count the last one, it's 10. This one is probably their big one of the greatest rock albums of all time. And this is just a greatest hits of songs, and it's just a normal studio album. But they had hit after hit after hit. Maybe the most well-known band from the 1970s. Big with a lot of rock people. Love the album. Didn't sell quite as much as the Beatles, of course, but nobody did. But most people who love rock and roll put this band at or near the top of the list. Are they overrated? Well, I can't see how they would be underrated. So I would think that this band at worst is overrated, depending on who's listening to them. And of course, they had lots of stuff, lots of songs on different albums that were basically copied songs from other artists' music, and they take hits for that. Some people really like to stick them for that. But they also have some of the most memorable tracks, and just about every album has at least one song on it that is gigantic. And when I was growing up, this was the premier band. I grew up pretty much in the 1970s. There was no doubt in my mind, and among the people that I grew up and hung out with, and the people within my grade, that this was the band. There was other bands that had big albums here, maybe a big year or two here, but this band was consistently considered to be one of the top bands in the world. Are they overrated? Yeah, maybe. It'd be hard to see them underrated, but maybe they're overrated. Some people nowadays think that their music isn't as good as we made it out to be. It's possible that might be the case, but growing up, I knew I didn't think that. So Led Zeppelin, either they're right where they should be, or they're probably a little bit on the overrated side. Next up, U2. I chose this album. This has the song Sunday Bloody Sunday, which I think is probably their most well-known track, although they have quite a few well-known tracks on a lot of well-known albums. This had a huge spark to their success, and it came out in 1983. There was a period of time in the 80s where radio stations were calling this the greatest rock band in history, and the members of this band were calling this the greatest rock band in this history. I tend to think that they're definitely overrated. That's just my feeling about them. I don't even think they're a top 100 band in history. It's just my own personal feeling about them. But you have to give them due where they do. They did do very well commercially and had a lot of fairly known success. And they're a fairly well-known band. I don't think there's any chance. I thought that was something on this, just a cut on the lips of the cover person. Anyways, yeah, definitely a band that most people would know. Are they the greatest of all time? Absolutely not. I don't think so. Are they overrated? I would say one of the most overrated bands. That's my take on U2. Next up is Blue Oyster Cult. Lots of really great albums, lots of differences to their music on all their albums. A lot of variety, a lot of people singing in this band, all 5 members singing. Of course, this is the album with their big hit, which is Don't Fear the Reaper. One of the most well-known rock tracks, I think. This album is quite good, but I don't think it's an exceptional album. I think it gets a lot of notoriety because of that particular song. Album cover is pretty decent too, but they have better albums and better album covers than this. But they're a band that really didn't make the jump to the superstar level. Now they made that jump to a certain level. They maybe like a tier 2 band, but just didn't quite make that next step up. And I think they should have too. Like Thin Lizzy, a lot of similarities here. Both had that one monster hit. Both had other songs that did well as well. Both have a lot of deep cuts. Both have a lot of variety to their music. And to me, both should have been in that next level of bands, but they didn't quite make it. So I would say they're probably, like Thin Lizzy, probably underrated. Next up, this band, Supertramp. This is a great album. One of the great rock albums of all time. One of the great production albums of its time period as well. Every song on here is a classic to me. They had hits on every album after this one, especially on Breakfast in America. Now, some people might have chose Breakfast in America for this particular, it being their biggest selling album, but I think this is their best album. I don't think I would get a lot of argument from people. It does have some absolute killer tracks. The twin vocals are fantastic. Very few bands have a combination of vocalists like this. Lots of different sounds, but some really memorable tracks. Now, Supertramp hasn't maybe not stood the test of time as a lot of people who I talk about nowadays, young people and people in middle age, 30s and 40s, don't even know who these guys are, which is odd to me. But at the time, they were a super band. Are they underrated or overrated? You know, you'll have people that say they're overrated. A lot of people nowadays, people say, yeah, they're not the band that you guys thought they were. They're not that great. And then you'll get people who say that absolutely they're underrated. They should have been considered right up there among the greatest rock bands in history. To me, they are. But I think they tend to be a little bit underrated based on the way they're viewed nowadays. So I would say this band's slightly underrated. A tier 1 band for sure. Should have been one of the greatest bands of all time. Next up, maybe the most, I'm going to say it before I even show the band. This is one of the most underrated bands in history of rock. No doubt about it. This is Gentle Giant. And I chose this album because I think it's generally considered their best album. Although they have a run of albums that I think are pretty spectacular. This is a Raconteur Troubadour on this album. There's a lot of stuff in their music discography that's absolutely tier 1 music. But they didn't have that massive hit. Nobody knows them because they don't have that big hit that you hear on the radio. In fact, you never hear these guys on the radio. But they're definitely an underrated band. I think they registered very well in the prog community. And as prog giants, I think they're right up there in the top 3 or 4 of all time, but they don't get noticed. So to me, this is a major underration of a band, maybe the most underrated band in rock history. So that's my take here for Gentle Giant. Next up, this is a band that's very well known, completely opposite of the last band. Have major hits, are in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, are often talked about as being the greatest metal band of all time, and that's Metallica. I chose Master of Puppets because it's the one I know the best. It also has all of the songs on it that I think are most well known by them. I have 4 or 5 of their albums, oddly enough. I think I got most of them at yard sales. That's why I have so many of them. I don't dislike these guys. I kind of like them. I don't listen to them as much as some other metal bands. Are they better than Sabbath, Iron Maiden, Judas Priest, and some of these other bands? I don't think so. I think they're in the top 10 metal bands of all time, but I don't think they're necessarily at the top of that list. I find them to be talked about as being like some kind of Messiah-like band, and I don't think they are. I think they're really good, and I think they deserve some attention, and I think that they're in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame as where they should be. But there's a lot of metal bands that should be in there that are not in there, and I don't think they're as good as some of those metal bands. So Metallica, Master of Puppets, and other stuff that I have, I think it's pretty decent stuff. I would probably say they're overrated, though. It's not a strong overration. I think that they get a lot of attention, and maybe it's deserved, maybe it isn't. I think they're a little bit on the overrated side. I can't see them being underrated, though. So Metallica. Next up, the final one on the list. This is Pink Floyd. Pink Floyd is a bit of an unusual band to me because they're loved by everybody. People that are prog community love them. People that are not prog community love them. People argue about whether they're prog or not. They've had this album, which sold 40 million copies. The Wall was another huge album for them. Wish You Were Here was huge. Animals is really good. Animals may be my favorite album by them. They have a lot of really interesting sounds, and their music is very differential from album to album. There's a little bit of a difference from them. And they sold millions of copies. One of the great stage shows. Just a lot of really great things about this band, and had some, despite the sound of their music, they had quite a few songs that did well on radio, and some that were like big hits as well. Not as many big hits as you might expect from a band of this stature. To me, this is a top 5 band of all time. Are they overrated? No, I would find it hard to believe that people would overrate this band. This band deserves every accolade that it gets. Definitely not underrated by any stretch. But I think like Zeppelin, and maybe even more than Zeppelin over time period, they're even kind of respected a lot by more modern people who don't know who a lot of these bands are, who think Zeppelin is overrated. But I don't get that feeling about these guys from an overrated stance. So I think they're probably right where they should be. So there you go. Those are my 10. I'll give you them again just in case you are trying to keep track here. So I don't have them again in the same order, but it doesn't really matter. So Thin Lizzy, probably underrated. No, definitely underrated. Led Zeppelin, possibly overrated, but I think they're probably where they should be. Supertramp, definitely underrated. Gentle Giant, maybe the most underrated band in history. Van Halen, I think they're probably where they should be. Journey, I get that same feeling as Van Halen, probably where they should be. U2, overrated. Blue Oyster Cult, underrated for sure, definitely underrated. Metallica, maybe where they should be, but maybe possibly a little bit overrated. And Pink Floyd, probably where they should be. So that's my take on these 10 bands. It it was just an interesting topic to talk about. I may do another 10 at some point too, if people liked it enough for me to do another one. Anyways, I hope you've enjoyed this episode of 10 bands, overrated or underrated. You tell me. Anyways, don't forget to hit the like and subscribe. If you want, you can leave comments in the comment section about any of the 10 bands, or you can tell me what you think of them. Just put the band and overrated, underrated, or are they right where they should be? And I think this will probably be a generational thing. People coming from my generation may see it a little bit more like I do. And then there may be people going along who don't see some of these older bands as being as big as we thought. It's going to vary. There's going to be a lot of variance here. So please put your comments in. I'm interested to see what people actually really think of these bands. So take care. Have yourself a good evening and good night here from the Prog Monster.